On a cold night on the battlefield, a dark, powerful warrior fights to destroy his enemies. Their bodies fly to pieces and no one can defeat him. For this guy, it was just another day in the Great War. Once he was done with the whole army, he sat down to rest on its remains. Only the smell of hopeless expectations remained on the battlefield and personified the former knights who wanted to crush something but were like garbage on the ground after fighting this warrior. This guy was not just an ordinary warrior, he was a hero of his battlefield. The cold weapon behind him, the fierce gaze, and the many myths only fueled curiosity about his strength. No matter how he was called, every time he heard a rumor about him, he wondered what else could be invented. Then someone close to him said Wang Yuan. It was a hero's name that only a few people knew. The boy heard a mountain of corpses of soldiers passing by, licking each other like paving stones. He went to meet his guest, since the only person on the entire continent of Uranus who called him that was his old friend, a knight in armor on a magical horse, the guardian of the Holy Temple, Jin Yan, illuminated by white energy. The guardian of the Holy Temple came to him with a message. He begged him to stop as he still had time. Wang looked at the guard and realized. He realized that Brother Yan was as good as ever, and that his efforts to save his soul would still be useless, since he liked killing, and if he stopped, this opportunity would be gone. He did not like it very much. The guard looks at him like he's the last bastard after he says that. But Wang says that he's a complete bastard, and if his guest doesn't like something, he should come and kill him. He raises his flaming sword and wants to convey to the stupid guard that no matter how many times he dies, he will not stop. The fire sword activates and everything around him lights up. He is the strongest on the continent, the final bombshell of the continent, Asura. That's what the warriors who want to defeat him call him. And the main mission he sees in his demon eyes. It's to deal with the bastards who have disturbed his peace. One more flash, and we are transported back to the time before the Great War, when an army of ice giants and dragons attacked Asgard. But not this story, not before the Great War. It was long before that, and in a different universe, when the world of this game was still unfinished and needed to be customized and completed. A lonely temple stood in the middle of a beautiful prehistoric landscape dotted with huge bones. This was before our hero became Wang Yuan. His appearance in this world was inextricably linked to this fifth holy temple. After all, it was here that he first woke up. Wang Yuan recalls that when he first opened his eyes, he somehow knew why he was sent to this world. He thought that he had been looking at this picture for a long time, but for some reason he only noticed its existence now. Looking at his hand, he realized that not only the world in front of him existed, but also he himself. He immediately realized that he knew his name, his skills, the amount of health he had to have to transform into any shape he wanted. It seemed to him that he had known all this information since his birth, and had always known that this holy temple belonged to him. He also knew that he was the only king of this continent called Uranus, and everything around him was subject to his authority. Then, as he got up from the throne and started to walk out, he remembered something else important that he knew. Perhaps the most important thing he knew. As he walked out of the temple, all of his subordinate beings bowed before him, despite their size and power. The most important thing he remembered was that he and his subordinates had a specific purpose that they had to fulfill in this world. But as he looked up at the clear blue sky, he realized that he would have to wait to begin fulfilling his life's purpose. After all the creatures in this game world were waiting for the players to finally enter their world. It was then that Wang Gong and his subordinates would begin to fulfill their vocation of bringing happiness and pleasure to all those players who would enter their game world. Then, in this memory, the voice of the system interrupted all of Wang Yuan's thoughts, and a system notification window appeared in front of him. The system said, "Well done, King. You have remembered and realized your calling. Now let me help you and teach you how to fulfill your mission." At that time, our hero did not realize what was happening and who dared to tell him what to do. Wang Yuan irritably asked the incomprehensible window, "Who are you?" To which the system's voice replied to Wang Yuan, addressing him as a king, that he was the main mind of this game, and his name was Chum, and he would be his mentor. At first, Wang Gun refused to recognize that he needed a mentor because he was already the king of this world. In his mind, it was some kind of absurd joke. A king didn't need a mentor to tell him what to do. He could fulfill his destiny on his own. Then the voice of the system realized that it had to prove to Wang Yuan the need for a mentor and his irreplaceable usefulness, as well as his true unconditional authority in this world. The system window behind our hero's back shone with a bright red light, as if announcing a fun show to tame the naughty NPC. Wang Yuan's body froze in place, unable to move. He felt that his body no longer obeyed him. Without realizing what was happening, he screamed, "What have you done?" The system's voice calmly and naturally replied that it was not doing anything special, just preparing to open the lid to his soul, that's all, just to prove our hero right. The system decided to turn on the training mode. Wang Yuan was still unable to move when the pentagram and many discharges of demonic energy appeared on the ground around him. Before he entered the training mode, the system warned him that he would feel as if he was dying during the training process, and he had better accept it and be patient. Wang Yuan still didn't understand what the hell was going on and what this crazy system was saying. However, the next moment, all unnecessary thoughts were pushed out of his head by an incredible pain that filled every cell in his body, and streams of information rushed straight into his mind. The system began to pour into Wang Yuan's mind all the knowledge about the game and its concept, all the gameplay and mechanics. But it started with the basics of humanity, and the fact that they belong to the Homo sapiens species and live in a world known as reality. The game world that Wang Yuan was currently in was a virtual part of this real reality. Humans created this virtual world for entertainment, and everything that existed in this world was just a VR game code. An integral part of this world are NPCs, that is non-player characters in the game that are present in the game only to entertain human players and provide them with a better gaming experience. While this information was being embedded in his mind, he couldn't stop screaming in pain, barely hanging on for dear life. This learning process continued for quite some time as streams of binary code were added to his knowledge base. Finally, after a long session with all the necessary lessons, this painful experience ended, leaving Wang Yuan alone with his burned brain cells. However, this did not last long. Just after he recovered a bit, the system window appeared in front of him again, advising him to get up quickly and stop pretending. Not much information was received, but Wang Yuan had questions and wanted to clarify things based on the information he received. He came to one important conclusion. Since there were two worlds, the real world and the virtual world, it could only mean one thing: that this whole world and he himself were just a piece of code. He was a little sad to realize this. It's not a pleasant experience to find out that you're not real. But the voice of the system corrected him, saying that Wang Yuan, as the king of this world, is not like other entities in the virtual world. He is not just lines of code, and his existence has a greater meaning. After all, he plays a key role in bringing joy to the players. The system assured him that he was a kind of superior being whose image was used to advertise and promote the game in the real world, for example, at conferences dedicated to the game. To prove its point, the system showed him recordings from conferences, the number of views of teasers and videos dedicated to the game, and many posts on social media. Many people in the real world were looking forward to the game's launch. It was obvious that just as the game was waiting for players to come, people from the outside were eagerly waiting to enter the virtual world of the game. Now that Wang Yuan had realized all this, he thought for a moment and then asked the system's voice why, if their game was so popular, everyone had to wait. Why haven't the players entered the game's virtual world yet? What's keeping us from meeting? The system's answer surprised him. It was you, Your Majesty, Wang Yuan. He couldn't believe it, and a fire of anger flared up inside him. With clenched fists, he said to the system window, "Boy, are you making fun of your king?" The system immediately had to explain itself. It would never dare to make fun of its master, and everything it had told him was true. It was because he himself had not yet woken up that the players could not enter the world of the game. He didn't really understand what this meant, but after thinking about it, he agreed that it was indeed his fault that he had been asleep for so long. Now he was awake, and now they could invite players into the world, right? But the system's voice disappointed him again, saying that there were still things that needed attention and completion. Our protagonist was already tired of the system's constant excuses, but this time it was too much. He was outraged. "Work? I'm the king. Why can't I have my subordinates do it?" The system, of course, had answers to all questions, even such ones. It turns out that among all the NPCs, only our hero was allowed to think and act independently. Such an honor even made Wang Yang a little embarrassed and blush. But in the end, after accepting this reality, he only said, "Seriously, everyone is relying too much on me, their king." With that, Wang Yuan set to work. First, he had to rearrange the bricks to complete the unfinished parts of the world map. Then he had to align the position of the celestial island in the sky, because it was out of place. Then he fixed many sculptures by adding details and improving their textures. So he fixed many things, correcting all the mistakes that the game designers had made, until finally the world map was completed and made perfectly. But it didn't end there. He had to check for bugs in the skill system. There were many of them, and after getting a few lightning bolts from the wrong skills, he got down to business. It turned out that apart from the cursed lightning, the tamed beast's roar was a completely useless skill, so he had to add code for this skill himself, adding more sensitivity. In addition, he still had to check that all the other non-player characters were following commands properly. There were so many adjustments that 2 hands were barely enough, and he used his dexterity to the maximum. Finally, a message from the system appeared in front of him. All preparations were successfully completed. After fixing everything, Wang Yuan fell to the ground from exhaustion and tried to catch his breath. The system immediately began to advise him to train more so as not to be so weak, but he had his own thoughts on the matter. It was too much to use him, the king, for labor. Suddenly, another notification appeared that the flower was crumpled. Our hero jumped, not happy. Damn flower, what's it doing here now? Now we have to plant it again and we have to hurry before the players show up. Help came from out of the blue, and the system's voice advised him not to worry. A second later, the system window fixed the flower with a code. Seeing this, Wang Gong asked the system if, since this was a virtual world, it was possible to fix the sculptures on the Sky Island and the skill errors simply by running code 2 instead of doing everything manually. The system calmly answered him that, yes, it was possible, and it would even be worth doing. He started to get angry, and asked what about NPC customization, which he had spent the most effort on. The system replied with a smile that he and all the game characters were also guided by the code. Wang Yuan's patience broke down, and he angrily thought that all his hard work was in vain, and the system could have done everything by itself, and left him alone. Finally he shouted, "Are you playing with me?" The system tried to calm him down, saying that his participation was simply necessary because, although everything worked according to code, the system still needed permission to act, and some things really couldn't be done without it. After some time, the solemn moment of the game's launch came, and Wang Yan noticed a portal opening in the sky, which was expanding with every second. Our hero watched in fascination, while the system informed him that the connection to the server was initiated, and its completion was 98%. When this figure reached 100%, the first players began to connect to the world. As soon as the game was open to the public, players began to register, and could now enter the virtual world ruled by Wang Yan through this portal. Because of the good publicity, there were many players, and they all wanted to quickly dive into the world of this game. The first thing players saw was a welcome message from the system. "Hello, welcome to the continent of Orano." Wang Yuan was now happy that the players could finally enter his world, and they came straight to his world. Now he wouldn't have to be bored alone. The players who were the first to enter the virtual world had different opinions about their first experience, but most seemed to be impressed and happy to be here. One player, PR, praised the building models, noises, and beautiful landscape of the virtual world, which is the level of quality expected from Uranos. However, another player didn't seem to share his enthusiasm and asked him to stop praising the game because he thought it wasn't that impressive, because the wait was too long, and he expected more from the virtual world. He was now planning to complain about it. Another player was impressed by the large number of gift sets, while others immediately decided to get together in teams to develop faster together. Yet another player, carefully observing the virtual world, remarked that everything looked great, but he would have preferred a game with artificial intelligence where everyone had flesh and blood, not this world. Another player overheard this, and seemed to be interested in the topic as well, but he mentioned that there had been some incident related to this. Rumors also quickly spread among the players. One guy even scared another by saying that there was a ghost in this game. Yes, a ghost or spirit with artificial intelligence. They were probably referring to Wang Yuan, who was facing an insurmountable obstacle at the time when he tried to reach the players. He desperately asked the system to quickly cancel this stupid magic that separated him from the players. Why couldn't he, as a king, go out to them and welcome all players to his world? But the system had a different opinion, and advised him to calm down and imagine what would happen if the final boss appeared in front of the players who had just entered the game. Wang imagined that he, being the final boss, would come out of the bushes, all scary and dangerous with infinite health, right in front of the beginners with a starting level and meager health, who had teamed up to defeat the slug. And then came the final boss. They would be too scared to continue playing and would just run away forever. After imagining this outcome, Wang tempered his enthusiasm. He didn't want to scare the players away from his world, but he was still sad and lonely. So he exclaimed, Damn, being too powerful is not good. Fortunately, the system seemed to have a solution to this problem. It advised Wang Yuan not to worry, because although he couldn't visit new players in his ultimate boss form, he had another form for such occasions where he could contact new players without chaos or suspicion. Wang Yuan was surprised by this suggestion and asked the system to clarify. Then the system told Wang Yuan about another important purpose of his existence in the game: to pretend to be a player. Wang Yuan was even more puzzled and did not understand what was being said. How could he, with all his power, be a player? The system patiently explained that it was supposed to be interesting, just like most human stories in the game. A close teammate should turn out to be a traitor and the character's main enemy. The system emphasized that since Wang Gang is the only NPC who can think and act independently, he should make good use of this in the virtual world, creating an exciting gaming experience and plot twists to delight players. Wang Yuan was also excited to learn that a team of players had been specially formed for him. He gladly agreed to take on the image of an ordinary player, seeing nothing wrong with pretending a little. However, in order to turn the king and the final boss into a regular player, he had to do one specific thing: remove his heart. When the system announced this condition, silence fell around him, broken only by the flight of a flock of birds. Wang Yuan was shocked and didn't even know what to say. Why should he take out his heart? Wouldn't he die then? Then the system explained to him that his heart was a data core that stored all the information about the final boss. If Wang Yuan removed the data core, he would automatically turn into a normal player. Wang Yuan was still unsure and asked again if he could really remove his heart without harming his existence. The system, now mockingly, suggested to Wang Yuan that the king seemed to be afraid to take out his heart after learning the basics of Homo sapiens, and was now afraid like human beings. The system reminded Wang Yuan that he was not human, so removing his heart was not a problem for him. The system also suggested that if Wang Yuan didn't want to remove his heart, he could give up this surprise for the players, but this could cause new players to lose interest and excitement as they progressed in the game. The system was even about to remove the code from the app, but our hero stopped it. He wasn't going to take away the players' joy. Thinking about the last words of the system, he came to the conclusion that he didn't want the players to lose their excitement, so despite the consequences, he agreed to this adventure. After all, this is his destiny as the king of this world. In this case, the system asked him to put his hand on the system window to confirm his decision, and Wang Yuan bravely made the decision to remove his heart. The moment he put his hand on the scanner, everything started to happen very quickly. Right out of his chest, an unknown red crystal appeared and began to glow. It separated from his body and disappeared, colliding with the powerful energy in his chest, and all his strength began to drain from his body, his stats dropping by hundreds of thousands, and his health also decreased to an unknown limit. His body went through pain again. A lot of pain, until finally the system completely took his core with one last flash. Without his heart, his boss form began to dissipate in the wind, disappearing without a trace, and the physique of a thin and short man began to appear from under that shell. Now he was a new player, like the others. The system congratulated the king on the successful transformation process. Now the game he would play would be completely different, but despite the messages assuring him that everything went well, something was wrong. Everything around him turned red, and pixels became visible everywhere. The system suddenly crashed, and warnings started flashing all over the world. Wang Yuan didn't know what had just interfered with the system. He didn't know that everything was crashing. The situation only became clearer when he looked up and saw what was happening to the world he had worked so hard to create. Destructive red rays began to fall from the sky, each one containing an indescribable power capable of leveling mountains and destroying the earth in a second. Eventually it became clear that the only culprit for this madness could be the one who had been by the king's side all along the system. In his anger and bewilderment, he decided to hit the system with a clue, even though it didn't really have a physical form, so he essentially punched the air. The errors continued to pile up, even though the system had managed to set up a completely new path for the game. This system creature, called Pestilence, was confirmed to have the highest power in the world. The first thing it did was initiate the complete destruction of Urano 1.0. Existing players and their respective data that had just logged in would be immediately transferred to the new world. The current progress was 1%. That was all, while the red rays of destruction continued to transform the entire world. Nothing was spared, not even the huge cities. The current progress was 30%. Players who just wanted to have a good time and play a new game were angry and bewildered, thinking they had just been duped into buying a hacked game right from its launch. The current progress was 70%. When the system finally recognized that he was the cause of this complete debacle, a diamond prism made of an unknown material began to appear over the king's head. The game progress for the player and data transfer finally reached 100%. At the moment, it seemed that the system request had taken on a physical form, displaying a mysterious logo. As if curious and enthusiastic, the query wanted to know what adventures awaited the players who came for the king in a completely new world. With an expression of genuine delight and enthusiasm, the system expressed that it was looking forward to seeing how it all panned out. It even left a cute little emoji. The king did not appreciate all this fun and enthusiasm. He was furious that he was caught off guard when the world he was supposed to be ruling, the world he had built, was slowly turning to ash. He tried to catch up with the so-called plague, but he no longer had the powers of a king. The system query kept teasing him, telling him not to be jealous and so on, while the surrounding area was experiencing total destruction on a nuclear level. The system told him that he would always be the most anticipated player, the king, no matter what. Finally, he was swallowed up by huge explosions that not only destroyed the inhabitants, but also the entire world. In one last request, the system expressed a desire to meet the king again in the future. Then the system turned into a relic pierced with a mysterious symbol. This relic seemed to have fallen into the clear and crystal water of the New World after the destruction of the old continent of Uranos. New pure heavens began to form as the relic sank further and further into the boundless waters, recreating vegetation as well. Finally, when everything was created, the players followed, including, of course, the king. The last boss, Wang Yuan, who was spawned in a completely different area, which hit him like a bolt from the blue. One second he was by the bay, and the next he was in the sandy desert. He walked and walked, not seeing anything for miles around him. His footsteps left imprints on the calm and hot sand. When he reached a higher elevation and looked back to the other side of the dunes, he felt his eyes were deceiving him. He knew the continent of Uranos like the back of his hand, and this was not it. The world had indeed completely changed in a matter of moments. Being a king and an NPC with free will, he felt ashamed of being tricked by a small and broken system panel. He was even ashamed to call himself a king. As if to add insult to injury, another system panel appeared in front of Wang Yuan, welcoming him to the land of Uranos. But this one looked completely different from the one that betrayed him. He might be the only one who knows that this one is either lying or just plain wrong. This is not the Uranos he has invested his blood and sweat into. Broadcasting to every player present in this new world, everyone's attention was drawn to the unusual design of the settings, where there was no visible exit button. Players, thinking it was just a game gimmick, assumed that it could be just a bug that the developers would quickly fix, so everyone could play with peace of mind. As if hearing everyone's complaints, a query in the system assured everyone that the door to the real world would always remain open. However, some more perceptive players began to think that these complications meant something more. The query also claimed that games always have their own rules. Players noticed that their established characters were out, and they were transformed into what they looked like in real life. Most of them thought that the game might have just paid homage to some classic manga or something in that humorous spirit. The system announced that if everyone wanted to know the way to the exit, they first needed to survive and reach the main island. Looking in the general direction of where the exit might be, it seemed that this innocent task would not be easy or innocent at all. The broken panel was playing tricks on everyone at this point. Wang Yuan assumed that it wouldn't be long before people found out what was really going on. Before all that, he needed to move and try to find some of the players here. If he was close to them, then they might have a chance. When he stepped into the territory of the mysterious forest ahead, something worked out of the blue. The system greeted him as one of the travelers. This was to be the first stop of his journey. The Yunzhou exploration, lasting 3 days. To improve the smoothness of this exploration, he could choose suitable weapons based on his attributes. Wang Yuan's traveler attributes were as follows. Level 1, no title, no main weapon, no starting class, no mana, 10 gold coins, only 1 point in all stats, no luck, nothing. Wang Yuan stopped, shuddering at the horrifying sight of his character sheet. He had come from a world where he was the most powerful being to a state of insignificance that could be destroyed with a single blow from any random enemy. Wang Yan focused on his terrible base stats. 1 point in all categories and 0 in happiness was just too cruel. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the sight of such mockery. As if to rub salt in his wounds, the system even congratulated him on reaching the initial level of fighting strength among the players. But he belonged to the category of the weakest fighting strength. In first place was someone named Jin Yaoan, and Wang Yuan was second, followed by Dwyer Linai and Wu Jinyi. Looking at the list was depressing for the king. He put his palm on his face, trembling with shame and speechless as he saw his name displayed on the leaderboard steps for all the players. It seemed that now he would start from the bottom. He simply couldn't comprehend it. He was once the strongest king on the continent, capable of anything. And now not only had his transformation into an ordinary player taken away his majestic appearance, but the system had also put him at the bottom of the rankings. It was so unbelievable that Wang Yuan began to delude himself into thinking that the system and everyone else might just be playing a joke on him. This made him wonder if it was possible that his old world was just a scenario that was now playing out in this new reality. Despite facing numerous challenges and setbacks, Wang Yuan decided not to lose faith. He knew that he had to find the strength to overcome his adversity and rise to the top again. If the game was changing, he could adapt. Wang Yuan began exploring the mysterious forest, which turned out to be the first stage of his new journey. He had to decide which weapon would best suit his needs. The choice was not great. A simple sword, a wooden staff, or a bow. Given his limited stats, he chose the sword, hoping that close combat would allow him to use his agility and cunning, which was still left over from his previous skills. Now a serious expression appeared on the fallen king's face. He accepted the system's offer to immediately familiarize himself with the weapons. There were 4 types of starting weapons that each player could choose from. If your strength and defense are your key stats, the system recommends taking a reliable and adaptive sword. If your highest characteristic is intelligence and you prefer to stay away from melee combat, then you should choose a strong and magical staff. If your strengths are agility and dexterity, then don't hesitate to choose a bow or nimble daggers that the system recommends. Each player's choice will determine their starting class from now on. Finally, Wang Yuan discovered something that was clearly identical to how the original Uranus was designed. In that previous world, weapons also determined a person's class. You could be a figure lurking in the shadows, an efficient killing machine like an assassin. You could be a manly figure in heavy armor, bold and unwavering on the battlefield like a warrior. Or perhaps you prefer to avoid the front line while dealing heavy damage from behind, like a true glass cannon mage. A fast and savvy scout who relies on instinct, nature, and weapon skill, like a hard-to-catch scout. Each class has different development paths. After mastering the respective weapon, the class change function will be available for a qualitative leap in strength. In the strength class, Wang Yuan heaved a sigh of relief. It looked like his precious world hadn't been completely changed. In his eyes, it was perfect, and the less changes there were, the better. He knew all the intricacies of the old world systems, after all. He needed minimal changes in everything. To be able to help other players, he thought long and hard and finally made up his mind. The dagger's discreetness and sharpness among all the starting equipment allowed him to choose it as his main weapon. It also awakened the assassin's starting class, prompting the system to completely upgrade his starting equipment. Assassin's Kit. The Assassin's Kit was designed with ease of movement, style points, and maximum speed in mind. Granting +1 to strength and +3 to agility, everything matched the typical assassin's appearance at first glance. Glancing at his character's attribute bar, Wang Yang noticed that nothing had changed. He was supposed to be getting stronger, right? After getting a little stronger, he brushed aside the prompt to desperately check if any stats had changed at all. And then he accidentally touched something that shouldn't exist in the physical world. As if he had momentarily touched the deepest essence of this mysterious realm, the system issued a congratulatory message. He had touched the so-called key memory, fulfilling the requirement to unlock a unique skill. In addition to the skill, he will also receive a great gift box that can be used upon arrival at the main island. The final game-changing boss is right there, with a miserable score but a unique skill. He could accidentally unlock this thing because he could control the game panel from the inside. As soon as he touched the key memory, it clicked for a moment. After the light slowly faded, an incredible power emanating directly from the system began to slowly envelop Wang Yuan. Down below, it was congratulating him on unlocking an unknown unique ability. with all the hype and expectations he was just beginning to regain. It was flushed down the toilet after he saw the unique skill marked as unknown, which it was not. Judging by the name of the skill, it was of the first level, had a number of moving characters of 1, and its use was unlimited. All in all, a whole bunch of confusing strings of characters, the only explanation for which could be that this unique skill was, as he was expressing his frustration, something hit him right in the jaw. Out of nowhere, he was hit in the jaw, taking a whopping 4 GP of damage. The impact caused him to flip over in the air. Or at least he tried to do so because the system had a curse word built into it. Feeling the system, Wang Yuan tried his best to maneuver his body as the force of the impact slowly faded as he landed. When he finally landed, he grabbed the starter dagger, sliding along the ground like a wild beast that had just been played with, not knowing who or what had sent him flying so far. He didn't know what had made him fly so far, but it was a hard blow, and when he saw the culprit, the first thought in his mind was that it was a pink beast. This pink beast is a scary elite monster, but in fact it was just pink slime, a common starter. It was an ordinary starting monster in any adventure game, a tiny blob of slime that made Wang Yuan fall like a log. He blushed in embarrassment and anger at how bad his character traits really were. And who wouldn't? Doing the same thing when a normal slime ball could just outclass you, even at this level. The slime ball had much better strength, defense, and agility stats. The strength, defense, and agility scores were 5, 3, and 5 respectively than the former King Oranos. About why the monsters were not rated based on their actual body composition, which was silly because there is no slime in the real world. This encounter also triggered another welcome message to launch the main story mission: attacking the slime base. Attacking the slug's base to unlock the path to the small island where the pink monster jumped out again. The pink monster jumped again, clearly superior to the well-equipped human in every way. It cannot withstand even a direct hit without harming itself. An injury that would end his career, or something like that. The only thing that could serve as his answer is the application of more advanced techniques. The techniques he learned as his last boss are still stored in his brain. Thanks to this knowledge and experience, he was able to circumvent the inequality of the raw stats and accurately hit Slug's body with his deadly dagger, believing that this would eventually reduce its health. But even piercing the Slug's defense was absolutely impossible, as its attack is lower than the target's defense, and it dealt 0 damage. In the old Uranos, damage that failed to pierce the defense still subtracted 1 GP, so it seems that the type of data counting he was used to was also changed by thinking about the data. He thought of something that could help him in his current predicament. Looking at his coded unique abilities, a certain line stood out. One line that could give him a clue as to what the hell was going on with this ability. Wang Yuan wanted to check something, so he hurriedly opened the attribute window. If there was a moving symbol, it could be related to the type of data in the statistics window. There was something different about the static display. Now he could actually use the window as a touch screen to interact with it. Huge. Now that's what makes this coded unique ability truly unique. He can actually move and control his stats. Selecting stats means selecting individual attributes, and his current character limit is only 1. Once he chooses luck, he can no longer choose any other characteristic and must place the points elsewhere as soon as possible. While he was recovering from this huge discovery, the pink slime was already ready for its next attack. Once again, Wang Yuan was too excited about how his new skill worked, and his back to the monster was wide open. He was ready to deliver a fatal blow at any moment. But when he turned his head to the little villain, his concern was replaced by a confident smile. With a confident smile, he flipped over his attributes screen, and his once pitiful 1 point of strength jumped to 10. It's time for this initial enemy to go quiet for a while. The battle should be easy from here on out. He'll be able to blow this pink slug out of the water with his new strength combined with his old tricks. However, the slime was still able to get the better of him, leaving Wang Yuan on the ground with his measly 2 points. He is 1 strike away from death, but he still tries to use all kinds of tricks. But he can't break the slime's defense. He deals 0 damage, his character placement has failed, his lux has returned to 0, and his strength has returned to 1. Finally, the system prompted him that each attribute column should have at least 1 point after placement. This turned out to be much harder than he thought at first. He thought he could just manipulate the stats scores, but it seems that's not the case. It seems that the system just liked to watch him suffer. The system just liked watching him suffer through trial and error, so his stats can't be moved, leaving him with only 1 possible option to pass the test. His maximum health is 10, but he only has 2 at the moment, so he has no other way to use his HP because The target for the unique ability has triggered a system warning that his HP has dropped below the safe level, and he needs to recover immediately. He desperately convinced himself that everything will be fine, repeating this several times. Under his breath, as the pink slime went in for the kill, Wang Yuan finally realized how his unique ability worked. There was no way that this damn slime could ever touch him. Only a quick, inconspicuous slice from his dagger. The dagger was enough to completely destroy the novice monster, judging by its stats. You can see that the assassin Wang Yuan has only 1 point of maximum HP. The other 9 points he converted into +N to strength. He's really not against a single HP build that uses the encrypted unique skill correctly. He moves to the rookie level, rewarding him with the rookie HP potion. His character attribute window now shows strength over all others at level 10. The system has finally removed the warning about his HP level because, as for the slug, it seems that fighting it will not be as easy as it seemed at first glance. As it turned out, the monster had actually split into 2 parts right where Wang Yuan's dagger had easily sliced it. With the appearance of the new slug, the main story quest has also been updated, and he needs to attack the slug's base to get to it. This time the goal is to kill 2 monsters. Wang Yuan immediately ran away. When he saw that the threat had doubled, he refused to believe that this was happening, that the plot development was going wrong. The slime shouldn't have been split at this level. It wasn't what he had planned for his world. Another important detail that he missed from the beginning was that in his world, the slime is fundamentally different. In his world, slime is blue. These pink slimes flying around were not in his memory bank. The pink slime flying over his head was not in his memory bank, but he remembered the broken system that taught him about the monsters with parasites. He even praised the system for having such a sense of style. If his guess was correct, then these pink slime monsters were indeed parasites in disguise. Wang Yuan believes that color change as a sign of parasitic development is not good, so the system he was referring to the Kuda parasitic plant, which splits itself to sprout and adapt to the method of attack, in other words, to him. And the system made it so that you can't kill these monsters like normal ones, they just divide endlessly. The more it divides, the more it multiplies. But as one of the architects of this world and its inhabitants, Wang Yuan knows the only way to stop it. Yuan knows the only way to defeat these anomalies, and by activating his coded unique skill, he has spent most of his 10 strength points. He has reallocated them to agility. And this time, he will show how a true assassin fights. With his maximum speed, Wang Yuan bridged the distance between him and the monsters with ease and lightning speed. He accelerated so fast that the 2 pink slime monsters fell to the sides, and suddenly their clot-like bodies began to freeze. They froze and finally cracked as if they were made of porcelain. And between Wang Yuan's fingers, he calmly discarded these parasitic pellets as the monsters' physical bodies disintegrated. The system then congratulated him for piercing through the enemy's body. For piercing the enemy's disguise, he received 2 parasites. The main story quest to attack the parasite base was completed. The parasite base was completed with D rank. The final boss completed the introductory quest. Trick's introductory quest line, despite being the second from the bottom in the Battle Force rating, he managed to completed the main story mission in 29 minutes, leaving him with just over 71 hours and 30 minutes to complete. In addition, the mission reward gave him 10 skill points, which increased his current research progress to 6%. In addition to the 2 parasites, he also received a compass for research and unlocked the basic assassin skill. Even though he had successfully completed the first mission, he couldn't help but feel uneasy about a monster of such size and cunning. If he hadn't been placed at the very beginning, the other players would surely have had a hard time. But if he hadn't been placed at the beginning, the other players probably wouldn't have been able to find the right path to completing this tricky main quest, just when he thought he would. The other players' research compasses began to vibrate and make sounds, as if telling them to go somewhere. Elsewhere in the real world, the company Dev had acquired was bombarded with phone calls. Employees of the cybersecurity agency responsible for the game are in a panic as they receive call after call asking them to organize a special rescue team to help players trapped in the game. They even have to dispel some fake news, such as a report that removing the VR equipment will cause the player's death. One man with long gray hair remained calm in the midst of all this chaos, admitting that their company's morning had been completely turned upside down, and he would like to hear the investigation reports on this VR game. The mystery man is the head of the technical investigation department of the cybersecurity agency. They have been following a large-scale VR game created by the so-called ghosts. But it is impossible as far as they know. The chief took a drag on his cigarette, wearing reconnaissance gear in one eye just in case. If there's a chance that Ghost really did create an entire game that caught the attention of countless players on launch day, then this Uranus is really something. Chief Lu wanted all the attention focused on the development of this incident, and every one of his people had to be on call. As soon as he dismissed one investigator, another showed up with a cheerful smile and good news. It turned out that one of their people had just successfully bypassed the Uranus system, which was huge. Even the ever-imperturbable Chief Lu was shocked that they had allowed one of their men to plunge into the abyss of the unknown. In Uranus' version, Chum is the traveler's best friend. The traveler's best friend, which can only be used on the current map, is in the hands of Mr. Final Boss, who has turned into Mr. 1 Point. Status: he is able to detect companions, enemies, and even important objects that will help you get to on the main island near the parasitic settlement of Pink Slime. He just cleared. Something or someone is hiding. He has just cleared. Something or someone is hiding. According to the compass, all signs point to something directly above him, atop a nondescript tree. Wang shook the tree vigorously, and someone screamed in panic at the top, not expecting. With one hand on his dagger and the other on his compass, he was prepared for the worst. A man in a dark green robe fell from above, coughing and choking heavily after falling from such a height. He immediately stood in front of him and began to question him about who he was. He found it extremely suspicious that he was hiding in a tree, and he stumbled over his words. He seemed to be trying to think of some reason to say something, but in the end, the only thing he could say, it was obvious that he was lying because he was chewing on leaves instead of fruit. As he logged out, Wang Yuan congratulated himself once again, this time on the fact that this new guy would now be marked on his compass. This encounter also gave rise to a joint mission. It was quite simple. All he had to do was gather traveling companions. To ensure the best travel experience for everyone, each guest has their own exclusive beach, but the blimp that will take them to the main island won't take off until everyone is gathered. Volcanic activity has been on the rise lately. So time is of the essence to complete the mission. This mission is only available to those who already have an exploration compass, and your current compass is non-aggressive, so they can relax and trust everyone they meet. Wang got so caught up in reading the mission that he forgot it was the first player he had ever seen, so he came out too strong, causing the former final NPC boss to turn around for a moment. The NPC boss turned around for a moment and tried his best not to scare the player. He was doing the same thing as the suspicious man, chewing on the inedible leaves of the tree. Not believing that his foolish reasoning had worked, he smiled awkwardly and spoke some nonsense. Because he was nervous, and because the man was acting as if he had never talked to other people before, he could not understand what was happening to him. The man began to entertain the thought that Wang Yuan might belong to a certain type of person, one who, ever since he slipped out of the monster base, he had been trying to watch other players fight. In all his short travels, he had never seen anyone attack the base. Some unfortunate souls even lost their lives at the beginning of the missions, and it's very scary to see them with your own eyes. But he still doesn't know how to deal with this person, and yet he didn't know how to deal with this man who had been so easily sent to the next world by the slime. For some reason, the strange killer casually addressed him as first brother. He just wanted to find out how strong Wang Yuan really was. Wang Yuan explained that he was just passing by and happened to see him. This formidable killer got into a small fight with slime. This guy even completely recreated how the fight went, with sound effects, playing the roles of both the assassin and the slug. He claimed that from the moment he witnessed it, Wang Yuan replied that it was just a beginner's mission. It was only a beginner's mission, and even Rob Guy himself should have been able to destroy his assigned monster base when it was raised. The stranger began to feel insecure as he lifted his hood out of shame. It looked like this guy's mission had run into a bit of a problem. Inside this small island, Wang Yuan killer may be the only hope for salvation. In the technical department of a high-tech corporation, a supervisor confronts his subordinate decisively, accusing him of negligence. He argues that the lack of detailed analysis from the employee jeopardizes their cybersecurity and, as a result, directly leads to a deadly risk for their frontline employees. The accused employee, however, sees no fault in his actions, arguing that they had 12 teams of highly skilled professionals at their disposal at the time, which he believes should have provided the necessary level of protection. This conflict reveals the tense atmosphere in the team and highlights the importance of everyone's responsibility in the cybersecurity chain. Despite all the server failures, only one hero managed to break through Uranus's defenses. His boss sent him back to work with some anxiety, but the question was, who is this stranger? The boss backed away from his employee, who assured him of his innocence despite the successful penetration. This meant that they were still able to find a method of transmitting intelligence. In the end, he turned out to be the best student who could complete the task. Chin-an was a participant in this project, immersed in virtual reality with a VR chair seat. The game world was mesmerizing with its graphics. But what really impressed Wang Yuan was the fact that he was stranded on an island without a completed task. His new friend suggested that it might have been a glitch or something like that. However, being in a critical situation, he had no choice but to run for his life. His rebellion knew no bounds after he accidentally touched the fruit on the tree. Ron was thrown into a whirlwind, but that was only the beginning. The system instantly notified him that if he decided to throw the fruit, it would definitely fall off. And the guy started throwing in all directions, thus causing a lot of provocative excitement. After another failure, Smoke was amazed to see the consequences of his actions, and he saw that the army of cunning slugs did not flinch from his blows. This horror that went through his nerves made even tears come to his eyes. He ran, accelerating his pace away from these gelatinous terrors, without any understanding that it was all a game that was actually playing tricks on him. After this incident, Wang Yuan was overcome with a sense of embarrassment, but his friend assured him that no one could have foreseen the division after giving him his gifts. This young man was happy that Wang Yuan was a strong enough ally to help him in the game. However, they had to create a team so that he could distribute his tasks. And he accepts an invitation to form a group from this guy, who gladly accepted. Now, this guy in the cloak swears to follow the sage's advice and not to leave his side for a single moment, because now he is a sorcerer's apprentice, and his mentor, Wang Yuan, is known to the world as an unsurpassed master of the dark arts. However, after he joined the assassin to the group, he discovered a surprise. This fighter had only the first level and a single unit of health, while he himself was at level 10. He looked at him and said, not hiding his seriousness, "You have only 1 health point left." These words sounded like a sentence because we both knew that one careless move and he would not stand. Passing through the dense forest, our hero reassured his friend, saying that he shouldn't worry. The art of strength can be improved. To become more powerful, you only need to reduce your own health. At that moment, the magician began to doubt whether he had really chosen the right companion for battle. But the capabilities had increased significantly, increasing the chances of his mission's success. So he turned to his mage friend for help. He reached out to him with a question. "Do you trust me?" Ma felt uncertain, but promised to trust him, asking him what he would like him to do for him. Our protagonist, without hesitation, instantly turned him into bait after those words, tying him to a tree. Obviously, this decision did not make him feel good, but he had a plan. Hanging from the rope, he asked if this guy was testing me, making sure I would stay on his side. Dangling from the tree, he turns to Wang Yuan. "Wang, there's a whole bunch of slugs around us. Are you sure you're ready to take that risk?" Our antagonist replies with a laugh, "Just relax, you're in no danger." A moment later, the stone rushes straight toward the slugs. They are outraged by this shameless impudence, and are about to give them a worthy response. At that moment, Ivan Yuan was carefully hiding among the thickets. Leaving his mage friend alone, without any cover on a tall tree branch, he felt such a rush of anxiety, as if he had had his worst nightmare. He waved his staff, covered in tears, and shouted, "Keep away from me!" At that critical moment, when the enemies surrounded him, intending to strike a fatal blow, the dark energy dynamically flashed, destroying every single slug, snatching the life right out of their bodies. And then the magician realizes that his power exceeds all his expectations. After successfully completing the mission, Wang Yuan holds his dagger in his hands and is the epitome of confidence. His unsurpassed skill is the skill of stealth. This skill is a basic for any assassin. After activation, the hero enters a state of invisibility, dramatically increasing his speed. After the beast has struck an impressive blow, he cautiously addresses his victim. "Well, did you like it?" The task was done, the ancient dagger was returned to the inventory. Who would have done this? Of course, no one else. Behind the tree, watching with special attention, was a girl who was watching the events unfold. She realized that taking this vampire's life would not be an easy task. Therefore, she had to carefully prepare for the decisive confrontation. The system was supposed to recognize the capture of the vermin camp as a quest completion, but it did not count any of the licks as achievements. The wizard asked if you had finally gotten rid of all the parasites, because the result was 0 out of 10. Our hero performs the task himself, wondering if his real powers lie in the gloves that fit his fingers. An attempt to transfer the inventory to player G was in vain. His backpack was already bursting with things, leaving no room for new loot. Our Antonis asks what's in there, why it's so full, and he answers, leaning slightly, "Oh, nothing, it's empty. I just picked up some explosive fruits." And now we see that he has a whole bunch of these fruits that barely fit in his backpack. But why would he plant so many? Did he really think he could fit more than 9 items in each slot? I couldn't find anything else that could save his life in this or that danger. But these explosive fruits, they could have been his chance for salvation. That is why, not being able to take anything else, I decided to give him a couple of these fruits. He regularly passes 18 explosive fruits to his friend Wang Yuan. Our hero realizes that by freeing only certain spaces, this will be enough to store the essence of these parasites. As a token of gratitude, he can get something extremely interesting. However, the wizard watched his friend with special attention, noticing how he was deep in thought. He was trying to find a solution to their situation, and the wizard realized that if his friend made excuses, claiming that he was in the wrong, it could only increase the anger in his heart. The wizard watched Wang Yuan, who was happily turning the explosive fruits in his hands. He thoughtfully weighed the reasons why he had decided to support him in his task. Let's move back a bit in time. The guys had just finished their work, and our protagonist, as usual, was concentrating on the system window. I told him how he had successfully completed the task by receiving an item from another player, and how, with the condition met, the scale of the unique recognition ability was unlocked. The more valuable and numerous the gifts are, the more the recognition scale grows, and the higher the scale, the better the bonus. Each gift that a player receives contributes to this scale. Once it reaches 1,000, the second phase of the unique challenge will be unlocked. What could be more pleasing to a character who fully realizes the incredible weight of this task? The transformed demon rejoiced in solitude, convinced of his success among the players. He basked in the pleasure of this thought, while Mock stood puzzled. He couldn't explain why the demon was rejoicing. After all, Ma had just solved the demon's great grief, not even considering his modest reward as something worthy of sympathy. So where did this unexpected joy come from? The sorcerer had shamelessly manipulated him, and he, in turn, felt grateful, confident that he was receiving help from others. Suddenly, the boy puts his hand on his shoulder and asks him a question. "What are you looking at so thoughtfully? Maybe we should get to work on those parasite nuclei?" Each member of the group successfully completed the main task, capturing the parasite camp. This gave them access to the research compass and team missions. Paying attention to their statistics and the common mission, they realized with confidence that they could now take on this team task. Time was running out, and they had to move forward. However, Mock was cautious with this guy, not trusting him completely, and doubting his decision to bring him along. He pulled the wizard's hood over his head, and as he walked on, became convinced that his new comrade was a real Nagyev. He promised to find his friend, regardless of the distance, and confidently pointed out the direction they should go in search of a common train of fate. A glance at the mountain revealed an extraordinary picture. The glint of the sun on the huge skull of a giant creature that seemed to crown the peak. In the same direction, 3 figures could be seen making their way through the twilight. Continuing on their way, they came across a tombstone where one of the players' journey ended. Among all the companions they had met along the way, one was lost forever. They were heading to the second beach, where a new companion appeared on their way, Hu Ninja, a skilled swordsman. They decided to accept him into the ranks of their brigade. Then, continuing on their way, they reached the third beach, where a camp inhabited by thousands of dangerous slugs was waiting for them. It is unclear how, but they held on, fighting them off more and more each time, and were still among the living. Fighting through the impenetrable masses of slime, he finally finds his old friend. The future friend, who bravely enters the battle with the slimes, makes a loud confession. He knows no fear of them. Surrounded by countless thoughts, this guy felt trapped, his life hanging by a thread. So being surprisingly alive, our hero successfully breaks through the defense and becomes a member of his team by special invitation. This man, armed with a sword and brown hair, pensively wonders if he is ready to accept the challenge. They stood there, staring at each other, realizing that their attempt to break through the defense had failed. The slippery skins of the enemies made it impossible to pierce their defense. As for the others, he casts a spell on them, activating the invisibility mode. He destroys every slug that gets in his way. His agility reaches its peak when he skillfully deals with everyone in his path, and complex combo attacks on thousands of slugs bring a lot of experience. Performing combos up to 10-24 times, he impresses with his skill and technique. The newcomer to the team only perceives him as a leak of dark energy, not seeing the guy himself, as his invisibility was in perfect condition. He froze in amazement, his mouth agape. In a matter of minutes, he had skillfully split those slugs into 1,000 clones, not intending to just stand by while danger loomed. Thus, he unexpectedly came to the aid of the young man with the brown skin, thereby fulfilling the main quest, the capture of the Polazite camp. And now his team consisted of not one, but 3 people. They realized that it was Wang Yuan who was the force pulling them forward, and they tried to support him by bringing him medicinal leaves and fruits so that he could rest before the last assault on the beach. An announcement from the system suddenly marked the end of their journey, promising the scoring would be done soon. According to the rules, participants who did not score enough points would be forced to leave the island. The organizers expected them to understand. The players exchanged anxious glances in the midst of uncertainty, realizing that some of them would inevitably have to say goodbye to the game. For example, his swordsman friend had only 15 points. The brown traveler had only 15 health points. Although he diligently swung his sword thousands of times, the system determined that his efforts were in vain. The magician was happy to be able to help his friend and earned 18 points. Wang Yuan was delighted to note that he had done a great job as a decoy. The system didn't forget about Wang Yuan, though, and carefully calculated his score, which amounted to an impressive 1035 points. The system congratulated him on this, and he found himself at the top of the server. The guy was delighted with the message he received from the system, because he wanted to rule in this world. His team was delighted with his success, and showered him with compliments. However, the guy discreetly brushed it off, saying that he shouldn't be so solemn about it. She was radiating with joy, because the system confirmed that they had all moved on, thanks to their leader. The travelers who did not fulfill the conditions would be forced to leave the island, and those who successfully completed the mission would face a choice: stay or leave this place. And to dive deeper into your exploration, please head into the thick of the forest to complete your exploration. Stay on the beach until the end of the game? The players did not understand what this meant. The system ruthlessly announced that the beach area would close in 2 minutes, and the players had to accept their fate. This order threw them into despair, forcing them to make an unexpected decision that caused real surprise among the game participants. The brown-haired player said that he realized the meaning of their words, and he enthusiastically announces that they can finally leave the game because he has a meeting in real life for the evening. This is just great, but his friends perceive him as unaccounted for because this was not in their plans. The magician claims that this story has little to do with reality. Everything that is happening now is reminiscent of an anime he used to watch. And knowing the plot of that story, they can't just leave. And yet, in the end, it's just a game. Maybe in reality it was Bach. In any case, it seems that they were incredibly eager to get out of the game. But why not? Why not assume it's true? Asks the guy with the new curls. Tom is convinced that he did the right thing by deciding to pursue this difficult path. He proudly carries this choice, knowing that he needs to act quickly and not hesitate. The brown-haired man's answer was unclear. Is this goodbye? His reaction raised more questions than it answered. Nevertheless, he retreats, waving goodbye, and admits that he enjoyed it too. Contemplating everything around him, our hero realizes that if the player wants to get out, he will never stand in his way. But does the path really lead to the real world? No one could solve this mystery until a white flash of lightning suddenly lit up the sky. A monster of demonic proportions suddenly appeared in front of the player with brown hair, striving to get to the surface. To say that the guy was shocked is an understatement. A gigantic level 99 monster known as the Islander Devourer grew up in front of them. It is full of life energy, but its strength, defense, and intelligence remain a mystery. The message from the system was full of excitement, as it unobtrusively informed guests that the beach area would soon be closed. This was done not just for fun, but with a high purpose, to keep the travel experience fresh for every traveler. All opportunities for recreation and entertainment will soon disappear, giving peace and tranquility thanks to the friendly trashman, who, like a guardian, promises comfort and relaxation to those who decide to end their adventure journey. The countdown to the beach closing sounded like a verdict. 5 seconds to go, and Hypocrite's face was covered with tears. Nearby, Mechnik watched the scene in complete confusion. This owner of brown curls tried to remain calm because, according to him, there was a way to get out of the game, although he was not absolutely sure about it. And although there were only 3 seconds left before the beach closed, our hero confidently asserted that this was not the end. He threw him a red rope, telling him to cling to it. She hugged his body, and at the last moment, she pressed him tightly against her. At the last moment, the attack is directed at a player named Jen. The powerful nuclear explosion caused by the monster must have killed him, scattering everyone around him. The system's announcement sounds like a bolt from the blue. The first stage is over, and all participants are invited to the next round. The player's eyes are riveted on the spot where the blow echoed, anticipating the next round with undisguised excitement. He, the master of mystical sciences, was not just appointed to evaluate the mechanism. His task was to reveal its secrets. Or was he already doomed to the death he had so accurately predicted? They were surrounded by a cliff, the result of the impact, and the beach disappeared without a trace. They were wrapped up in the thought that their friends would never return. However, Wong was carrying a player with brown hair, who was extremely shocked by what he saw. Having desperately overcome the danger, the magician exhales a sigh of relief as he watches his comrades. His voice trembles with excitement as he asks about their condition. "Is everyone okay? Are you okay?" Meanwhile, a brown-haired young man, lying on the ground, writhing in pain, complains, "It shoots in the stomach. Not a very pleasant feeling. Sorry, but it was necessary. Sometimes the situation calls for desperate measures." Indeed, he couldn't think of a better way to hurt John than by saving him. To make amends, he hands him healing elixirs. However, Jen felt saddened to realize that he was just a tool for them to hone their skills. They had helped him, so he didn't mind training together. He grabbed his head in despair, realizing that he did have an important meeting that evening. Why wouldn't they let him leave the game? But Wang Yuan couldn't help but ask, "Didn't you flinch when that huge monster wanted to swallow you?" But the answer was full of confidence. No, no terror. Even if he had eaten me, I would have known that everything would be fine. He shrugged and explained to the boy that it was just a game. The magician, in turn, did not understand that it was just a game. But it was not so simple. The white-haired swordsman, a small figure with a large sword in his hands, realized that the game was over. The brunette warrior responds to these words in surprise. Why do you think so? Diving into the mysterious and mystical circumstances, the swordsman asked if his uncle had ever heard stories about games that were so exciting and incredible that it was simply impossible to get out of them, even without a single tear in their eyes, or vice versa. When at least one appears, it matters. Go to the end if defeat is on the horizon. Suddenly he was overcome with fear, realizing that he was in trouble, because it was dangerous to ask to leave the game now, wanting to avoid a quick death. Wang Yuan noted that he stopped this young man for a special reason. However, Ma convinced everyone that no one knew what would happen. The boy got up from the ground, squaring his shoulders. Taking the little swordsman in my arms, I gently patted him on the head, saying, "You're not in a cartoon, kid, but you can read, right?" Wang watched the boys and noticed that their relationship had changed significantly. It was understandable that they would feel fear, because the world was under threat. I have already done my best to make the players experience this feeling of panic. If he steals his core now, he has no idea where it is. It's a diode panel. If they don't know the truth, maybe everyone will feel better. Wang Yuan dispersed the two bullies, admitting that this was his first encounter with a monster of this level. He could not contain his emotions, and it is still unclear what exactly happened. If we consider Mechnik's words to be logical, we must be careful in this world. Let's move forward with heightened attention, so as not to join the ranks of forgotten souls. He had trained this brown-haired boy and now wanted to repay him for his generosity. He assures everyone that he will take them to the main island where they intended to go, and that they will all successfully complete the game. John realizes that he is not in danger of dying in this game, and the words of that black man echo in his memory, and he realizes that everything has changed radically now. He extends his hand to his new friend, as if it were a bridge connecting their worlds. Since he's here, let's stick together. He is not used to getting everything without effort, and is ready to make every effort for the common good, not inferior to his friend. He stretched out his hand in Wang Yuan's direction. They firmly unite in a brotherly handshake. They have no choice but to join you in the search for the next task, which is to find the treasure chest. However, the treasure chest immediately jumped ahead of them and flew straight into the abyss. It was not just a chest, but a monster that knew how to disguise itself as an ordinary object. So the magician stood in the way of the swordsman, deciding not to let him open the mysterious chest. Even though I, like a judge, interpret the information I have, it is not worth starting a search for. However, our hero sets himself the main goal of becoming the king of treasuries. However, he has completely forgotten that the key to this power is the ability to open them. As soon as Jen crossed the threshold of his usual shelter, the world around him came to life in a colorful array of possibilities. The new mission held the promise of unprecedented challenges and treasures worthy of only the bravest of hearts. Jen was ready to take on the challenge, feeling the adrenaline pumping through his veins and the intrigue making his heart race. He excitedly shares the news with his friends. They are facing the main task of the second level, missing luggage. They have to attack the vermin's camp to get their stuff back, and they have to do it before noon. Wang Yuan grabbed his head, realizing that in order to successfully complete the task, he needed to return his lost luggage. However, his friends reassured him, convincing him that this was just part of the strategy. They emphasized that he was too much into monsters. Finding himself in a difficult situation, he suggested focusing on the specifics of their situation. Game designers wouldn't make the main quests harder for no reason, he reasoned. But maybe there is a way forward. Even if it seems like we're stuck and can't take on the next task, it could mean that an alternative route is opening up for us. This was the mysterious place they were supposed to find, and now they were walking toward it, trying to recall the details of the quest. Their belongings have disappeared without a trace, and they just want to get back what they lost. However, an enemy will stand in their way, the one who is behind the disappearance of their luggage. Wang suggested that they follow that path and track down the villain. However, a huge monster appeared on their way. A 10-level forest bear, from which they were forced to flee. It had only the first level. How can I defeat a level 10 monster? Why is the monster's level higher than ours? The wizard asked, frightened as always. They took shelter behind a tree, while the bear wandered tirelessly through the forest trying to find them. It was the pinnacle of defense, strength instead of graceful dexterity, intelligence designed to withstand attacks. But wouldn't it have been better if one had been able to distract him while the other found the luggage? How is it possible that the route disappeared without a trace? It was because there was no other option. However, the antagonist was sure that they would return the way they came. This path they had just traveled opened their eyes to how to defeat a 10-level monster.